Welcome to Exploration Dreamland, a quiet read aloud of the writings of explorers of the real world and the worlds of imagination. Drop anchor, relax into your comfortable bunk, and drift off to Dreamland with us as we read a lightly edited version of Theory of Circulation by Respiration by Emma Willard, published in 1861. If you would like to begin at the beginning, please start with Season 4, Episode 83. A quick content warning. This episode includes references to the death of a child, animal experimentation, and livestock slaughtering. This work was written quite some time ago and therefore does not necessarily reflect current-day outlooks and language choices. It may include stereotyping based on race, class, and gender. The scientific texts may use outdated terminology or be inaccurate in light of more recent discoveries. This podcast was created primarily to help you relax and to entertain you. The texts are chosen for their ability to charm and interest you, rather than for educational purposes. If you would like to stay in touch between episodes, you can follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Exploration Dreamland. If you have a moment to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, it would help other listeners find us. You can also hear our episodes on YouTube. If you are listening there, please like our episodes and leave a comment for us. We'd love to hear from you. Now, take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, relax any tension in your muscles. Close your eyes, snuggle into your sleeping space, and listen to tonight's tale. Section 4 includes proofs from Dr. Cartwright's great experiments on alligators, resuscitation of Dr. Eli's child. Dr. Bowling, editor of the Nashville Medical Journal, endorses Dr. Washington, who, in that journal, crushes out all opposition to the theory. Dr. Draper's acknowledgment of it in New York. Homœopathists. Conclusion. To Dr. Marcy. Thus, for 30 years had I maintained, not only without public support, but against discouragements, these great truths of which I had been allowed for myself such life-giving evidence. But early in December 1851, Dr. Cartwright, then of New Orleans, announced in a letter to me that he had publicly become my advocate. His name will ever be connected with the theory on account of the remarkable experiments by which he demonstrated its truth. In the presence of eminent physicians and other scientific persons, he resuscitated an alligator which had been killed by tying the trachea. A note from your host in 2024. The specific descriptions of the experiment have been omitted, but the alligator does appear to have survived the experiments. Footnote 7. These physicians, Dr. Dowler and Professor Forshee, gave certificates of their witnessing and assisting at this memorable experiment, which were published in the Boston Medical Journal, February 1852. End footnote. Dr. Cartwright says in his letter to me, published in the Boston Medical Journal, January 7, 1852, quote, By this resuscitation, your theory of the motive power of the circulation of the blood was established beyond all doubt or dispute. Additionally, this vivisection clearly proved that the primum mobile of the circulation and the chief motive powers of the blood are in the lungs and not in the heart." End quotes. Dr. Cartwright mentioned in the same letter a case in which his faith in my theory had saved the life of a breathless infant, inducing him to unwonted perseverance in inflating its lungs. Able opposers to the theory, however, arose in New Orleans, some of whom believed that the resuscitation might have been effected by applications to the nerves. Dr. Cartwright procured, from General Jackson's battleground, another alligator, which was publicly killed and vivisected. The doctor's opponents first tried their means to bring the animal to life and failed. Then he, by artificial respiration, restored the huge reptile as before, thus proving that artificial respiration could restore suspended animation when nothing else could. Dr. Eli was one who had opposed and written against the theory. In the meantime, his infant son had cholera and expired. His medical friends had left him, and crape was tied to the handle of the front door. Standing by the side of his lifeless babe, Dr. Eli said to himself, "If this theory should be true, I might yet save my child." And profiting by the example of Dr. Cartwright in restoring the dead alligator, he restored his child to life. Remitting his efforts too soon, again the infant ceased to breathe, and again and yet the third time the father restored him when the resuscitation proved complete, and months after the child was living and in perfect health. Dr. Eli then came promptly forward and, like a nobly honest man, reported the case as convincing evidence of a truth which he had formerly opposed. Footnote 8. Dr. Cartwright also reported the case in a letter which was published in the Boston Medical Journal, September 1852. This resuscitation was more wonderful than those detailed in my published work on respiration. All cases of life thus restored are proofs a posteriori of the truth of this theory of the arterial circulation. End footnote. Whoever wishes to know the history of theories concerning the motive powers of the blood as they then stood may learn them by looking over files of the Boston Medical and Surgical Journal, edited by Dr. J.V.C. Smith for the years 1852, 1853, and a part of 1854. Dr. Cartwright wrote for it during those years, and, encouraged by his protection, I frequently answered objections which flowed in from various medical opponents. The objection derived from the fetal circulation I answered thus in the Journal of May 1852. The change occurring at birth, so far from falsifying this theory, affords presumptive proof of its truth. When first the air enters the trachea of a newborn infant and animal combustion begins, the inflation of the lungs must open the vessels and vesicles prepared to receive the venous blood. To fill the new-made vacuum, the whole of the blood from the right ventricle rushes through the pulmonary tube, leaving none to go through the ductus arteriosus, thus made useless and henceforth to be abolished. But what is to move the blood from the capillaries of the lungs? The heart's force, insufficient before without aid from the mother's respiration, is now divided, while its work is doubled. A new power must then be generated by the meeting of the air with the carbon of the blood, and kindled by the peculiar functional vitality of the lungs. Without such a power, no perceptible cause exists sufficient to move the blood onward to the left ventricle. But it is moved thither, and with a power which presses down and closes the valve of the foramen ovale, thus clearly manifesting that this current exceeds in force that in the right ventricle. Grant that the new function of respiration has furnished a new power, and this astonishing instantaneous metamorphosis from amphibious to mammalian life becomes perfectly intelligible, and the wisdom of the Creator is fully vindicated, showing that His work has been truly interpreted. In the Boston Journal of April 21, 1852, is an article from Dr. Cartwright entitled Confirmation of the Willardian or Important American Discovery, in which the author endeavors to remove what doubtless has been one cause of the delay in acknowledging its truth. Those members of the profession, he says, whom science has only perfumed, are the most apt to look down with proud disdain on any discovery originating with individuals not indoctrinated. They do not make the proper distinction between selfish quacks who seek publicity to line the pocket, and those who, prompted by some mysterious power, come forward against their interest and at the risk of their reputation. Rather than to contemn and ridicule, it were better to study the manifestations of that mysterious power. They do not consider that the truth thus brought to light, while they fail to acknowledge it, is affording to selfish quackery a capital to trade on. To the same effect is the advice given to the profession by Dr. B. F. Washington of Hannibal, Missouri. He says, in the Nashville Journal of Medicine, July 1854, quote, "It is time for us to be acting. The honor of the profession is in danger. The theory of respiration is a truth which will cut its way, and if we do not take it up and teach it, in a few years we may see the mortifying spectacle of the community teaching the profession scientific truths. Quacks have already taken it up, and we have inhalers and air cures of various kinds." End quote. Footnote 9. Good systems of exercise have been made in some respectable institutions for health, openly formed on the principles of this theory, such as that by Dr. Hamilton of Saratoga. End footnote. The first appearance of Dr. Washington as the advocate of my theory was in the Nashville Journal, March 1854, and his fertile genius had there brought a new illustration of its truth. It had, he said, opened his eyes to the explanation of a fact which had puzzled him from his boyhood. Quote, "In slaughtering animals, if the trachea was cut, scarcely any hemorrhage resulted, while if that was left untouched, full hemorrhage occurred. By the Willardian theory, the fact is readily susceptible of explanation. The blood, filling the trachea, suspended respiration, and of course the impelling power of the blood was suspended, and the hemorrhage ceased. The engine could not work without steam. When the trachea was not cut, respiration went on and kept up the circulation until the animal was nearly exsanguineous and the powers of life gave way." End quote. This fact was clearly ascertained by Dr. W. K. Bowling, the well-known editor of the Nashville Journal and able professor of the theory and practice of medicine in the university of that place. He sent me the journal containing this welcome endorsement of my theory from one who was, as Dr. Bowling assured me, an observer of superior tact and learning, known by his medical compositions as well in Europe as America. Since that time, March 1854, that journal, though not excluding articles which oppose, has been understood to be in favor of the theory. Dr. Washington has written repeatedly, answering all objections, and he has, in the journal, as I have been assured by one of the editors, crushed out all that would take up his glove and is left in undisputed possession of the field, looking in vain for an opponent. Footnote 10. When the time shall come that, the truth of my discovery being no longer denied, its originality shall be contested, it will be a significant fact that, in the Nashville Journal of September 1854, is an article against it from a physician signing himself Justitia, which he thus heads, "The Willardian Notion." In evil report, it was indisputably mine. This article also shows that the Harveyan theory is still maintained by the opposers of mine. End footnote. In the meantime, in 1856, Dr. J. N. Draper, professor of chemistry and physiology in the University of New York, in an elaborate work on human physiology, has agreed that Harvey's theory of the paramount power of the heart's action in the circulation must be abandoned, and that to respiration must be assigned, quote, "the great duty of originating the blood's circulation." End quote. Footnote 11. See Draper's Physiology, page 142. End footnote. Dr. Washington has not only defended me in every important position which I have taken, and added new illustrations, but he has made the theory available to showing new proofs of the wisdom of God in the creation of man. Thus, steam is formed in the vacuum of the lungs at the low temperature of 67 degrees Fahrenheit, while if there were no vacuum, 212 degrees Fahrenheit of heat would be required to produce it. An impossible quantity, since it would coagulate the albumin of the blood. But form the vacuum, and the boiling of the blood with any degree of heat less than 101 degrees Fahrenheit could not cause any such disaster, while the steam going off from the lungs through the arterial system to the capillaries gradually condenses, warming the body by giving off its latent heat. And the latent heat of vapor is the same, however it is formed, and is always 1114 degrees. What divine wisdom and economy are thus displayed? Homeopathy has, we believe, never found any difficulty in receiving this theory. We know that, at one of its conventions held in Providence, it was ably supported, and Dr. Marcy, whom I have the honor to address, was, as we have seen, one of its earliest defenders. He has never, whether allopathist or homeopathist, been known to hesitate when his own mind brought him clear conclusions. The distinguishing mark, according to Dugald Stewart, of intrepidity of character. With profound respect, Emma Willard. Thank you for joining us for Theory of Circulation by Respiration by Emma Willard. Stay subscribed and keep in touch with us on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. Exploration Dreamland is produced, edited, and hosted by me, Sarah Van Zaley. A big thank you to Project Gutenberg and LibriVox for helping me find many interesting publications. Thanks also to Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com for providing the theme music for this show. The title of this piece is Kalimba Relaxation Music, if you would like to visit his website to hear it in its entirety. Sweet dreams.